Joined from Toronto now by Rodney Loeppky. He teaches politics at York University. Rodney, thanks for being on the program. I want to begin by President Trump's focus on immigration. He's really stoking fears here, saying he's going to send up to 50,000 troops to the southern border, threatening to end birthright citizenship. Is this going to backfire for him and the Republicans at the polls come Tuesday?
Well, I think that there's a reasonable possibility that it will. It should be the case that the Trump administration is touting the current state of the economy, and yet it seems quite fixated on this particular strategy that's worked for them in the past, but it's worked for them in a very particular context in which the Democratic candidate was, not as attractive to its base as it has been in the past, in the years of Obama, for instance. So it's a very risky strategy, and I think that it's entirely possible that it may motivate a whole series of voters to come out, not the least of which are young voters and Hispanic voters.
And how key are those young and Hispanic voters in this election?
Well, in a midterm election especially, they are critical. Typically, Democrats don't get high turnouts in a midterm election, and Republican voters tend to be a little bit more steady in that regard, so Republicans tend to do better overall in midterm elections. So if it is the case that that younger base is energized, and if a new lot of Hispanic voters come out, that could be quite devastating for Republicans, particularly in House races.
Why do you think so many young people are energized more so in this election than previous ones?
Well, that, again, you had a particular context in which the Democratic Party was quite split, wasn't it? And many of those young voters, come election time, were somewhat disillusioned that their candidate hadn't been nominated by the party. And it's not that they didn't come out and vote for Hillary Clinton, it's just that not enough of them did.
Rodney, more than 30 million Americans have cast early ballots ahead of Tuesday's election. Does that tell us anything one way or another?
Well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily say that it will lean one way or the other. What it does suggest, though, is that the overall turnout will be quite a bit higher, and numbers are being projected now in excess of 50%, which for a midterm election is in fact quite high. So that suggests when turnout is high, it suggests that Democrats do very well. Does it mean that they will take the Senate in addition to the House? Well, not necessarily. They're at a structural disadvantage in the Senate.
Let's talk about some of the more high-profile contests that everyone will be watching, including governor races in Florida and Georgia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, these are critical races, there's no doubt, and they will, they may be part of the reason, in fact, that minority and young communities are getting out to vote more. You have a possibility in Georgia that the first female black governor will be elected, and very suspicious circumstances where the Republican candidate is both the candidate and the Secretary of State who controls the electioneering process. So you have a very problematic scenario, and one that will probably energize new voters, especially in that state.
Any predictions from you on which way the House and Senate will go, both, of course, controlled by Republicans right now?
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty likely that the House will flip to Democrats. How far it will flip and with what depth, is very difficult to say. The Senate, as I suggested, Democrats are at a structurally disadvantageous position because they have far more senators up for re-election than the Republicans do, so the Republicans are a bit safer there. It's not entirely possible still, though, that the Senate may flip, although I wouldn't, bet the kitchen sink on it.
All right, we'll leave it there. Rodney Loeppky, thank you.